This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Tuesday, January 21st of 2025. Hopefully everybody is staying warm today, and we are so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode of Ag Matters PM, I talk with John Hendrickson. He is with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I had the chance to visit with him at the Practical Farmers of Iowa annual conference earlier this month as we discussed the financials of flower farming. We'll also have a check of the closing markets with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. But first, let's go ahead and listen into that conversation I had with John Hendrickson. Just real quick as we start, tell us a little bit, just a summary of what you've found so far on how that works.
So our project is a SARE-funded project through the Western SARE program, and we're collecting financial data from a group of farms across 3 years. We're collecting some basic information about how long they've been farming, the scale of the operation, how many people are involved, how many hours they're putting in, whether they have other enterprises in addition to flowers, and then some basic financials, gross sales of flowers, the expenses associated with those flowers, whether they're carrying any debt. We specifically ask about payroll because on any specialty crop, and flowers especially, there's a lot of work involved, and so labor is the biggest expense, and so payroll is going to be a big chunk of gross. And then we're calculating things like gross sales per acre, net income per acre, hours put in per acre, things like that to get some benchmarks for folks that are interested.
So yeah, when you look at those farms that you studied, what was kind of some of the success stories that you saw from those farms, the things that they're doing right that have helped flower farming be a legitimate practice for them?
Well, we're at the very beginning of our project, actually. We have 1 year of data of the 3, so I don't really have main conclusions yet. But we're seeing really impressive sales figures per acre, which is not could be expected for a specialty crop farm. It doesn't take very many acres to generate a lot of stems. You're not growing corn or wheat. We're growing things really close together. And so you can generate $40, $50, or $1,000 on an acre or more.
So what started off the drive behind this study and making sure that that information's out there for people if they are interested in flower farming, that they can use that? Yeah,
what drove the study is that while there's a lot of interest in growing cut flowers, there's not a lot of information out there. Most people who are dairy farmers or corn growers or raising pigs have ready access to benchmarks for their industry. Yields per acre, income per acre, cost per acre. There's all kinds of sources of information for that, but for specialty crop producers, there isn't. And so people getting into it, they can maybe watch a few YouTube videos and get excited about the prospects, but we're trying to get some information so that we can temper the rosy-colored glasses with some reality. Because while you can gross a lot per acre, your expenses are high and you're putting in a lot of hours. And frankly, there's a lot of employee turnover. There's a lot of stress. There's owner burnout. It's a lot of work.
Right. And like you mentioned, labor being such a huge thing, there aren't specialty machines that you can use to work on these flowers a lot either. So that labor component, very vital.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some mechanization of planting possible on a flower farm, but in terms of the harvest, it's basically all handwork.
So then you just gave your first panel on talking about this data to the practical farmers who are here today. How was the attendance and how was the participation in that discussion?
Yeah, we had a good group in the room, lots of people who are already growing flowers. But as I said, there's not very much information out there for them to look to as guideposts to, am I in the ballpark of what is possible in terms of income? Are there other market channel opportunities that I should be pursuing? And that's one of the interesting things about a lot of the flower farms is they're not just farms. A lot of these farms are fulfilling the role of a florist too. And so some of these farms are doing wedding flowers where they're creating amazing, beautiful bouquets. And so they're adding tremendous value to their crops. So some of the income per acre gets a little complicated because they're not just growing a product and shipping it off the farm. They're doing a lot of value add. And so they're being paid not just as a farmer, but they're being paid as a florist, as a designer.
All right, John, lots of great information. For anyone who would like to kind of keep up to date with this study and the data that's being released, what's the best way for them to do that?
It's a Western SARE grant, so you could search the SARE website for the project. The leader of the project is Lenny Larkin, but the people can also reach out to me. My email address is jhendrick@wisc.edu.
Thanks again to John Hendrickson. He's with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Also, a shout out to the Practical Farmers of Iowa for having us at their annual conference, giving us the opportunity to speak on that topic. We'll take a look at the closing markets next, but first, here's a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and time now to take a look at the closing markets with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. First off, Kenan, it's been a busy past few days in the ag marketplace. What have we seen going on in the grains today?
Great day for the grains. Soybean and wheat were the leaders today. Corn was also up, strong all the way across the board. The best word I think I read today was lackluster rains in Brazil and Argentina, southern Brazil, I should say, in Argentina, which lent some pressure on that soybean market and that South American crop. So we saw a positive day there. And then there was no set in stone tariffs placed by Trump here. So he did mention a possible 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, but nothing set in stone yet. So the dollar was down sharply today, and grain markets responded very positively to those stories.
And we know with a new administration, anytime we see a big change like that, the markets are extra volatile. If we do end up seeing an announcement on the tariffs, do we expect a sharp reaction back the other way, or maybe just a correction back to like a more normal pricing?
Good question. And I would say that the market probably reacted like there would be more tariffs, like they had already priced some in. And then if you looked at the livestock markets, there was actually pressure on those today because he specifically had called out Canada and Mexico, which are huge importers of the beef and poultry that we have in our country, and pork, I should say. So, if you know, maybe if he mentions a country by name and there is news on that, the market could react negatively. Just maybe based on that dynamic we saw between the grains, and then the differences we saw in the livestock markets today, since he called those two countries out by name. So yeah, like you said, very volatile, hanging on every word that he says and executive order he signs.
And speaking of the livestock, what did we see for price action in the cattle and hogs today?
Yeah, like I had, alluded to, they were down today. Hogs closed down, cattle were down. Live cattle were mixed, with feeders being down, but pressure on the market here coming out of the 3-day holiday.
And then when we look at, you mentioned having the 3 days off and getting that pressure. At this time of year, we don't see a lot of that demand for the livestock anyways. So when we come up, say, to Easter next, do we see that demand tick up, or are we just kind of in that lull?
I would probably, there is those demand fluctuations and markets move up and down with demand. I, I would probably be looking at, more wide arching trends of what is the base demand of the U.S. consumer and what are exports doing, to kind of get a grasp of maybe where these fluctuations across the board will go. I would be paying attention to cash here, especially in that feeder cattle contract. That feeder cattle index has been tagged at 278 for 5 or 6 days now, and hasn't been really able to crack that. So do we see some weakness there, or there's some weaker sales today, and maybe that's why the cattle market sold off? That index comes in lower this afternoon when it comes out here in an hour or so, and maybe we see some more weakness across the board there in those feeder cattle.
All right, Kenan, lots of great information today. For anyone who would like to get in touch with agmarket.net, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can check us out on the web at eggmarket.net and find a broker in your area.
All right, thanks again for the analysis. As always, Kenan, we look forward to talking again soon.
Yep, thanks, Riley.
Okay, well, that again was Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. We'll take a look at how those numbers close through the market window at iowaagnet.com. March corn up 5 3/4 at $4.90 even. March soybeans up 33 1/4 at $10.67 1/4. Soybean meal up $13.80 at $3.11 even. Soybean oil up 8 cents at $45.77. Chicago wheat up 20 even at $5.58 3/4. Kansas City hard red wheat up 27 even at $5.75 1/2. Minneapolis spring wheat up 18 1/4 at $6.01 3/4. March oats up 10 1/4 at $3.72 3/4. On the Merck, February live cattle up 30 cents at $197.05. March feeders down 80 cents at $267.25. February lean hogs up 7 cents at $81.20. Pork cutout went unchanged at $91.32. And February Class 3 milk down 75 cents at $19.43. And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. That also brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, and find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free morning, midday, and closing market podcasts, as well as the Iowa Ag Matters podcast and Pods of Potential. You can find those on your favorite podcasting service at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Podbean, as well as our website again at iowaagnet.com. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.